Before I get started and say anything, I got to say, this soundtrack is fire. Can we just appreciate this for a moment? Sea of Stars is a 2023 indie JRPG inspired game by Sabotage Studio, and that alone makes me impressed because as you can already see, this game is beautiful. Look at that scenery, look at the giants, look at the enemies, and oh, even the atmosphere is incredible. The game clearly takes inspiration from some all-time greats like Chrono Trigger, and hey, great source material usually leads to a great game. The game doesn't take itself too seriously at times, even naming a character Captain Cliché, and the pirates as a whole are really one big fourth wall break that lead to some humorous interactions. This is a fantastic 40-hour adventure that makes you feel like you're on a nostalgia trip playing some of those classics you played 20 or 30 years ago, while not being hindered by those annoying things you block out of your memory, such as random encounters and level grinding. That's right, this is a JRPG-esque game that doesn't require grinding or battling every 10 steps you take. What a sin, right? I love this game so much as it reminded me of playing all those pixel games I still treasure today, like Final Fantasy VI, and JRPGs are really my favorite genre of game if you couldn't tell by my channel logo. The gameplay is engaging, the story is entertaining, and genuinely full of some great, albeit sometimes humorous twists. Well, let's not delay this ship anymore. Let's go stargazing and journey into the world of 2023's Sea of Stars. Spoiler warning, the plot of this game is great, and maybe I'm gullible or dumb, but I did not see some of these twists coming. I highly recommend you play the game before you watch this video, you will not regret it. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to like and subscribe as it really helps the channel out. Let me know in the comments some games you want to see me cover next. Thank you. Now let's journey back to Moon Cradle. Let's start with the gameplay, shall we? The combat is turn-based, which might turn some people off if they're not fans of the style, but hold your horses here, because it's a bit different. If you've ever played the South Park games, the combat is turned a bit more engaging for those who don't like turn-based by adding interactive elements, such as timing your hits for bonus damage, or timing your blocks to take less damage from enemies. Characters have a set standard attack type of either slash or brute force, and different situations call for different combinations of these. There are also characters' magic abilities, which include a timing mechanic, such as Valere, our female protagonist's Moonerang attack, where you have to time your deflects to successfully rack up hits and do maximum damage. I found this great. Instead of kind of tuning out during overworld enemy encounters, you wanted to try to find ways to defeat them as quickly as possible and try to master the timing of your hits to deal maximum damage. Speaking of overworld encounters, there aren't any random encounters. Yes, you heard me right. We are in an RPG and there are no random encounters. Earth-shattering, unheard of, and so welcome. Thank you, Sabotage. I loved getting to backtrack through areas I've already spent hours completing to get that one chest I missed and not having to worry about a battle every 10 steps. It made the game feel like less of a chore and more of an enjoyable experience. As for the enemies themselves, they come in all shapes and sizes, and the designs and different abilities are pretty cool. Enemies have different weaknesses, such as slash attacks, sun magic, or lunar magic, and some enemies are even immune to damage, except from these specific attacks. This keeps the combat fresh, and you never feel like you can just steamroll through an area, as you have to kind of test what each enemy is weak to, instead of just mashing the attack command. I will say the level up doesn't make a huge difference, and can make the combat a bit stale towards the end of the game, but that's my only critique here. I feel as though this is mitigated by the enemy variety and the fact that there really isn't an overwhelming amount of enemies. Enemies will often charge up magic attacks that can only be interrupted by certain combinations of attacks called locks, and some of these attacks can be devastating, such as an enemy that's magic attack instantly drops your character to 1 HP. Sometimes these attacks give you no possible way to use all the necessary attacks in time, but I figured out embarrassingly late that one of the party members I used for the whole game has an ability that can delay attacks, which I assume is the solution for this. This was a welcome addition to an already relatively engaging combat system, and it created the need for more strategy if you wanted to get through some of those tough boss encounters. On that note, the boss encounters are great. The designs are cool, attacks are creative, and some of them are genuinely challenging. Or maybe I'm just bad at the game, I don't know. Either way, I had a blast with some of them and felt some real tension through some of the late game bosses as they would really come down to the wire. Stormcaller especially was a challenge for me that had a great design, cool lore, and some awesome attacks, especially that one where he summons a dragon-like sea monster known as the Hydra Lion to attack you with, which actually shows up as its own boss later on. This fight was tough for me, and I barely made it out alive. It seems Sea of Stars found a nice level of difficulty where the game wasn't too easy, but it also wasn't punishingly hard either, which is perhaps again due to the lack of level ups really making much of a difference due to enemy scaling. That was fine by me. I also really enjoyed the first Dweller fight, as there was an interesting change in the formula where we fight alongside our peers and Headmaster, and it feels like the climax of the game until you realize you're just getting started. This was a welcome switch, and I couldn't stop smiling the whole fight. I had a blast here and was excited to see the culmination of my hard work in a rather enjoyable boss fight. As for character customization, it's standard RPG. We have 6 party members to choose from by the end of the game that can be equipped with various gear found in shops and overworld treasure chests. Nothing crazy here, and that's okay with me. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The game even pokes fun of how we go to new towns and suddenly have people selling daggers for 20,000 gold but they live in a wooden shack. That really made me think for a minute about every RPG I'd played and how I'd never really thought about it like that. Oh, Sea of Stars. There's also traversal abilities we unlock throughout the game to allow for a wider puzzle variety, such as the ability to blow bursts of wind, a Spider-Man grappling hook, and even the ability to change time. Between our portal gun companion and a literal alchemist master of time, you really begin to feel like a Walmart Justice League after a while. The level design is incredible, the art is beautiful, the puzzles are creative, and you can travel throughout places you wouldn't think you can go on the map. I love trying to discover all the chests in an area just to find out I could interact with a random background pot or painting to open up a new path. Or that the weird hole on the ground is actually a geyser that skyrockets you to a new area. And I found level design to probably be the overall strongest feature in an already incredible game. Of course, it wouldn't be an RPG without a gambling minigame in the form of pick a chest, and who could forget fishing? Honestly, fishing is a genre-defining aspect here, and without it, could we really call this an RPG? Overall, the gameplay is simple, yet engaging and fun. We have cool overworld traversal, fun puzzles, engaging combat, a variety of party members, and some great bosses. While turn-based may not be for everyone, I think Sea of Stars mixes it up enough that this game can be enjoyable for anyone. The fact that this was made by an indie studio does nothing short of impress me, considering how well made and fantastic this game is. I encountered absolutely no bugs or glitches, which I know the game is simple, but I was still impressed. This game is a must play for the landscapes alone. But then we add in the great enemies, the bosses, and of course, the story. Our story starts with a mysterious character narrating, who I'm sure will not eventually join the party because that's never happened in an RPG before. Looking at you, Final Fantasy. Anyways, we can choose to play as Zale or the aforementioned Valir, who are 2 children born on the summer and winter solstice respectively, which in this world means you are destined for power. Through proper training, they harness the power of solar and lunar magic and train to take down monstrous beasts known as Dwellers to prevent their world from guaranteed destruction. These Dwellers are creations of an evil warlock known as the Fleshmancer, and if left unchecked, will eventually become World Eaters and destroy the world. Many of the Solstice Warriors, which is the title given to our heroes, have come in the past, but none have ascended into Guardian Gods, as they have been told that they will once they gain enough power. I'm going to do my best here to make the backstory a long story short. There were 2 alchemists, the Fleshmancer and Reshin, who achieved immortality through their work. Well, the Fleshmancer became dissatisfied with immortality after a while and created the Dwellers to spread chaos, to which Reshin began training Solstice Warriors, the only beings capable of harming the Dwellers, which has led to a feud spanning many different timelines, worlds, and parallel universes. Both have agreed not to directly intervene, and this conflict will last until the Dwellers live long enough to become World Eaters or the Warriors become gods. As for our protagonists, their mentors, Brewgraves and Erlina, remember those names, are upset with the cycle of death and lack of results from the never-ending battles of the Solstice Warriors, so they betray the Solstice Warriors and become minions of the Fleshmancer. Don't know how being a monster servant is better than fighting for justice and traveling? I don't know. Through this, a group of acolytes worshipping the Fleshmancer are able to revive the strongest dweller known as the Dweller of Strife, whose design I was a bit sad to see as I was expecting a cool giant dragon or something other than a D&D Evil Eye, but hey, I guess a dragon would be basic too. Anyways, in the battle with the Dweller of Strife, our party is overwhelmed by the strength of the Dweller. Sarai, our time-traveling parallel universe-crossing party member, don't ask because this confused me a bit too, takes one of Reshian's potions and attacks the Dweller, summoning the Fleshmancer as this is a breach in their agreement to not directly intervene. The Fleshmancer attacks, to which we see a rather sad death of our childhood friend and party member Garl, which ultimately leads to the party getting a new resolve and motivates them to travel through the Sea of Stars. We battle through some cultists and futuristic enemies and face a final showdown with the Fleshmancer's new minion, a transformed Erlina, who if you forgot is one of our old mentors that betrayed us, that ends with the Fleshmancer agreeing to admit defeat, transcending our two heroes into guardian gods to protect the universe. Once you cross the Sea of Stars, the game takes a page straight out of Chrono Cross's book and allows you to travel back and forth between the two worlds. This is where the game goes from medieval magic to straight sci-fi, and it's very well executed. It almost feels like it could be two separate shorter games, and as much as companies like Square Enix love stretching one game over 3 entries these days, I'm happy Sabotage decided to keep this all as one game. Jokes aside, you may think the game's over after we defeat Erlina. There is actually an alternate ending where it's revealed Garl's death was prevented through a little time travel and plot armor, and the party defeats the Fleshmancer in the final battle. Basically, our walking glass companion takes the hit for Garl and survives, faking Garl's death in his place. And I would try to explain how this loop might have been going on the whole time, but that involves some complicated time travel, and if there's one thing I avoid trying to explain, it's time travel. I'll stop before this becomes a Marvel movie. Okay, are we all on the same page here? That's the closest thing to a plot summary you're going to get out of me. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Let's dive a little deeper. The initial twist, where we find out Erlina and Brewgraves, who are the older Solstice Warriors and mentor figures to Zale and Valir, are actually plotting to betray us, was probably my favorite part of the story. There's a really great boss fight just before this reveal between all 4 living Solstice Warriors and our first Dweller encounter. Then it's revealed our mentors, who we trusted, are working for some creepy cult-like acolytes and had been planning to betray the world for the destruction of the Fleshmancer the whole time. For really, well, to save their own skin and to be free? If by free they mean being turned into monster minions of the Fleshmancer, I don't see how they saw this as a better alternative, but hey, I guess if you're into that, I'm not gonna judge you. Weird kink is all. Anyways, this twist shocked me, but I'll admit I forgot about them for a bit after this, as we don't see them for a while. It kind of feels like after this big twist, the story is somewhat in the training and fetch quest anime arc, as we spend a while gathering items and seeking the necessary power to take on the new threats. I'm not knocking this as a whole, it just feels like it went on just a bit too long, and led to the main plot being sidetracked for a bit. There was some really great character development throughout this section, which was good, as the characters are really a strength of the game, and we recruit Reshian during this, who is pretty much one of the most important plot characters in the game, being that he's the Fleshmancer's old rival and all, so I guess we can excuse it. I also did not see the twist about Sarai being a cyborg from another world coming, but hey, who could have guessed something so creative and out there? Anyways, let's talk about the antagonist. The acolytes are a bit forgettable to me and seem to be filler villains. They are essentially just grunts that work for the true big bad, and I think the game knows this and plays into it a bit, as they simply name them 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I appreciate the humor. The actual Fleshmancer isn't the best and most mapped out villain, but I think his best strength is his connection to our party member Reshian, so he's okay I guess. His whole persona is relatively traditional RPG, as he's essentially just a villain seeking destruction because, well, he's bored? Not super deep, but considering the game's inspirations, this can be forgiven. The antagonists are definitely not the strength, and they can bring some confusion to the plot. After a bit of research, I learned that the studio's other popular game, The Messenger, is tied heavily to this one and provided some clarification, but I'll count that as a weak point for the game since I believe you shouldn't have to play other entries with different names to understand a game's plot, just a personal preference. The antagonists may be lacking a bit for one reason or another, but I think the real strength lies on the other side of the battlefield. The protagonists have some great chemistry. While their motivations are simple, being just, hey, I want to save the world with my friends, or in Sarai's case, stop the Fleshmancer and save my people, They have some rather interesting interactions with each other and the situations they find themselves in. Ultimately, their character development stems from their growth and power as our party takes on greater foes, but you can really feel the connection between the party, and I can't quite put my finger on what causes this. Maybe it's because we've been through so much with characters like Garl, such as seeing him grow up with our main characters through flashbacks, but this man's death hits hard. It doesn't feel right adventuring without our warrior cook, but I think this makes our showdown with the Fleshmancer all the more satisfying. Seeing Garl antagonize the Fleshmancer just feels like sweet revenge. While they aren't the most complex characters, they're so likable, and the atmospheres are so strong that they feel like they have so much depth, even if they really don't. To wrap it all up, while Sea of Stars may not have the greatest story ever or the most innovative combat of all time, the game is wonderful. What it lacks in some departments, it makes up for in others. The game is worth experiencing for the level designs and soundtracks alone, as these are absolutely top tier. Is Sea of Stars groundbreaking? No. Does the game provide an accessible RPG that's great even for gamers who aren't fans of the genre? Absolutely. I think fans of all different types of games can appreciate Sea of Stars for what it is, and the fact that it comes from an indie developer makes that all the more impressive. If you watch this video and haven't played the game, what are you waiting for? Start that download now. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thank you so much. Until next time.